Tonight, Bill couldn't make it. We're going to reschedule him for later, maybe in February. I'll work it out with him. But so for tonight, we're going to do a couple of kind of classic-ish looking streamers. I enjoy tying these for one, just you know, you can catch fish on a black or olive woolly bugger all the time, but if that's all fishing ever was, then it'd get pretty boring. I like to kind of, you know, tie these for fun and definitely fish them. So this style really leads to shallow water fly fishing in lakes. You certainly can weight them and fish them deeper, or you can, you know, use weight on your line or a sink tip or a sinking line. But the first one here is it's called the Canadian Killer, and it's a variant. I don't know if you remember when I did the Mrs. Simpson and Hamill's Killer. They were kind of a flat fly, basically. And the Canadian Killer is kind of a takeoff of those killer flies from New Zealand. This is actually more of a takeoff of the Hamill's Killer. It's a little bit closer to that, which was created by an Ontario fisherman. He created this version with contrasting red and yellow to be more visible in the stained water. It's like a tannic stained water up there. And the fine dark markings on the overwing suggest movement and kind of a scale effect. It's pretty fun to tie. The one here that I'm showing you is kind of a fancier version using golden pheasant crest for the tail. But usually when I tie these, I use saddle hackle. So for the recipe, .3X or 4X streamer hook of your choice. You can make it about any size. Again, normally when I demonstrate these flies, the measurements are off of a, you know, half a shank length, a shank length, that kind of stuff. So whatever size you want to adapt this to, as long as the materials aren't too big for, you know, how small you want to tie it. You can use just about any size. It has a tag of silver tinsel, but I usually don't do that. That's a little bit too fancy if you're using these for crappie or bass or big gills. The tail yellow hackle barbs are again pheasant crest if you want to get fancy. The butt is peacock herl. Body is red floss, and the rib is silver tinsel. And normally on a floss-bodied fly, if it's a lighter colored floss, it's always a good idea to use a white thread, at least while you're doing the body, and then switch to another thread. On this fly, I don't, because it actually, the original has a red thread head. So I just tie it with red thread through the whole fly. And so you're not going to see when the floss gets wet, you're not going to see the darkening that a black thread underneath would do. So So go to the materials. Um, so I've got the hook in the vise. Um, the body is going to be this Danville 4-strand floss. I'll probably use 2 strands of that. It's just easier to wrap. When you use 4 strands, sometimes it's a little hard to control everything. If you're doing a bigger fly, if you're going up to say a 4 or a 2, you might want to use four strands. The rib I have, I'm just about out. So this is the last of the silver and gold fine tinsel that I have. So can't really show you that on the spool. Again, I'm using the red thread. This is a 140 denier ultra thread. So I can flatten it if I need to. For the tail, again, this is a kind of a webby saddle hackle. I would strip off this soft stuff down here and go for these. Most of these in the middle have a lot of web to them. And so those would just show up a lot more than if you were using these toward the tip where they're a lot finer. So that's kind of the sweet spot if you're using hackle for a tail. And then golden pheasant. The if you buy a golden pheasant crest, they're not very expensive. The top of the head, it's actually a head with the beak and everything. The top of the head has these crest feathers, and then down the neck are these hackles, basically, which they call them tippets, that you're familiar with, I'm sure, too. We'll use that in the next fly. I'm going to use the original called for heel flank. You can use mallard flank. I've done that several times. I do have a little bit of this. I think it's teal or gadwall. Most of them are so similar, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. But I'll use that for the over wing, and then the under wing will be just this red bucktail from a kit of scraps that I have. And so we'll get started. Been a while here. So I'm going to start. I don't want too bulky of a head. Um, so I'm going to start at least an eye length back from the eye, and then holding my thread tight, just make touching turns just to keep a nice smooth body. And then every once in a while, rotate my bobbin counterclockwise uh, just to flatten it out some, or just leave it hang for a while. Eventually it'll flatten out. Now I'm getting pretty close to the end there, and I don't want a big bump here. So I'm going to take probably, this is a real long golden pheasant crest. And I'm going to try actually lean it more toward myself. And hopefully by the time that actually gets back to the bend of the hook, it'll actually be on top. And if there's any curve at all, it'll be curving slightly up. So that's actually pretty straight, which is fine. I'm going to flatten this some more. And since, oh, I didn't, I'm going to use peacock herl for the butt, and I didn't have that out. So I'm going to grab Just one strand of peacock herl. Break off the fragile tip, and then I'm just gonna, oh, that's not a very, it's kind of a fine flues on that. I might try to see if I can get a little bit shaggier one. That might be better. And then ideally, I'd like to try to get this peacock herl to where when I tie it in, the you can see that most of the flues are hanging off of one side. It's actually kind of a V shape, but depending on where you get this on the eye, um, a lot of times you'll have mostly the good flues are on one side of the hook. So I'm going to try to tie this fairly short and have those flues facing downwards. So then when I get to wrapping, and I'm going to go ahead and do that now, just to get this step out of the way. Try to go as close as I can to each one and make a nice fluffy, those are standing out pretty good. I got pretty lucky with that orientation of that herl. You don't need to get too carried away. I'll probably go about right there. Now I can back up a little bit and then tie that down. And then I'm just going to try to work my way forward here just to keep that base nice and flat. Give it another spin. I'll go ahead and cut these up here toward the front just to get the rest of that out of the way, make it easier. So I've got a little bit of flues sticking up from the pearl in that body, but by the time I do the next step and put on the floss, that'll all go away. Clean up a little bit here. All right. So the next thing that needs to go on is the rib and the floss. So I want a silver rib on this. So I'm going to tie that in with the gold side facing out. I'll take a couple of turns there. Now with this floss here, I'm going to undo about maybe at least, say, 10 inches. And then hook it back in there and clip it long enough to be able to grab it next time. And then it's 4 strands like this. So I'm just going to take 2 of them and set the other 2 aside to use another day. And then usually end up getting the ends a little bit uneven. I'm just going to cut those so they're even. And tie that in right here. And then just holding on to those. I'm trying to keep the tinsel on the far side, and the floss, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to use a clip to hold this out of the way on the far side. And then I'll just hold this floss. Give it another spin to flatten the thread. Now, if you spin it too far, you're actually twisting it the opposite way. So Have to just kind of give it a little bit of a, say, a 2-second spin, and then keep going. And you can see my thread's pretty flat right there. And I want to go back until it's right up against that little peacock butt, and then come forward with nice flat thread so you can see the body's nice and flat. And you can go a little faster with a flat thread. Now, the secret to floss is take it around and underneath, and now you can see that it's all there's some kind of loose fibers there. This is several thin strands like silk. So if you stroke it all the way to the end, you can get those evened up. And then you can tell against that dull thread, that just really gives it a nice shiny body. And as long as your body isn't too lumpy and bumpy, those two strands should stay pretty well together. When you get an uneven body, that's when one of them starts moving forward a little bit. And each time I do this, I'm just kind of running it through my fingers. So you got to make sure you have nice, clean hands. And if your fingers are rough from doing some yard work or something, might have to use some lotion or maybe do some fine sandpaper against your to kind of take down some of the. Go
The old
ahead.
timers used to use silk gloves when they tied salmon flies.
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far. I do like making them look fancy, but I'm not going to go that far. So now, since I tied the gold side down, as I fold it around, now you can see the silver side is facing out. And with that tinsel on the far side, as I wrap it underneath, it's going to avoid the tail and the butt there. And hopefully this piece will be long enough to finish it out. Maybe I should have kept the hackle pliers on that. 6. There's 7. Right up to the head area. And then whoa, tie that down. And the hardest part is pretty much over. I also failed to get out the throat, which should be right here, which is, you've seen this before. I had this brown hairline cape. It's a hen cape. And I just love the rich color of that brown. So there's a couple of different ways to do the throat. I'll do it one way on this fly, and then I'll do it the other way on the other fly. And I don't know if I did this recently, but I'll do it again. So you can obviously see that's a hen feather because it's so webby and wide, of course. I'm not going to use any of this marabou looking stuff down below. You can use it for some things. I actually like tying micro woolly buggers, really, really small ones, and I'll use soft hackle, that soft stuff for that. I'm just going to strip a lot of that away. And then now some people will take, say, half an inch from one side, half an inch from the other side, and they'll all kind of press together. I don't really go to that extreme. But I like to take a good, like a little more than a half an inch. Try to get the tips as even as I can, and then pull the rachis away. Now, a lot of times you can kind of tap on the butts if they're not all even. Like see there, as I switched it, I ended up getting those butts uneven, but you can usually tap on your thumb a little bit and get those gathered to where they're pretty good. Now I picked a bigger feather from further down the back because the shorter ones in toward the top of the neck aren't going to have um, long enough fibers to be able to give me the throat that I want. So I turned it over. I'm just tying that in on the bottom, holding it on the other side with my finger. And then as I turn it around, that's nice throat on the bottom there. Now I'm going to kind of even up this front area a little bit, and that's the throat. The underwing, you really want to go sparse. Um, just adds a little bit extra color and kind of some bulk. But so this is some pretty long bucktail. So I'm just going to take these longest ones and pull them out and then kind of gather it all together. And then again, just take the longest ones, pull those away, and just basically kind of hand stack it. So I can get it pretty close like that. I've got a couple of long ones in there. I could just take those out. And then here's some short ones. Take those away. Now, with it being this long, it's kind of hard to stack, but you can just cut some of those butts off now, the longer ones. I will give it a little bit of a stack here. Okay. And then I want to go just, maybe some of the longer tips can go just past the tail. And I'm marking that for length with my other hand there, and then I'll just transfer that and cut it. That way I'm not trying to um, cut those ends and have them get in the way of the eye. Now I've got my finger pressed against the other side of the hook just to make sure that doesn't wrap around. I'm just giving a real tight few wraps just to hold that bucktail in place. And then for the topping, that's a little bit too much. So what I might do even is kind of snip out some of the center. So I got it kind of like a V like that. I'll just fold it. Fold it together, and you can kind of twist it like that, and that'll get them kind of oriented together. And then just lay that across the back. That's actually, I don't really want to cut any more off of that. So I'm going to cord up my thread so it'll give it a good bite. And I'll just grab the end of that feather. Tie that in. I'm really torquing on it. Go all the way to the eye and then climb back up the hill. Fill that in and give it a nice cone shape. And then I'll whip finish. And these flies always look really good with the UV resin, and it's quick. So normally if I turn it away like that, I won't get the UV in the eye. Just to kind of save time, I like to put a goodly amount on there. Make sure it's all covered. Sometimes I'll shut off the other light just to kind of make sure that UV gets in there and cooks it good. And that's the Canadian Killer.
That's a beautiful fly, Mike. My guess is if we tied that about half that size on on a smaller hook, it'd make a pretty good brook trout fly too.
Oh, even this side for brook trout, even this size for brook trout. Um, you know, if you got a lake that has wipers
Yeah.
or white bass in the real early spring, uh, you'll just have kind of a mixed smorgasbord of bass, white bass, the hybrids. Any of
Uh-huh.
these bigger flies, I'd use for crappie hybrids.
Yeah. You don't understand the brook trout I'm talking about are only about 4 to 5 inches long. So
I
Right.
was just going to say the brook trout in Montana are about that big.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The next one, it um, similar, uses a little bit different materials, but a pretty similar fly is the telephone box. Um, you've kind of researched it a little bit. It was supposed to have been, I believe the original was probably red and black because that's the coloring of the telephone boxes in that part of England, I guess. But you see it mostly done in nowadays in orange and black. There's in Ray Bergman's trout, the telephone box wet fly pattern. I don't have a graphic, but I can show you to it on that PDF that I sent out with this. That's what the wet fly looked like with a brown turkey wing slip, and of course, jungle cock for rich people. But that's what the wet fly version looked like. But then the streamer version replaced that turkey wing with red squirrel tail. The share. Again, 3X or 4X streamer hook. If you want to put a tag on it, gold tinsel. I really struggle with putting a tag using the French tinsel. It's a lot easier to do it with the thin mylar tinsel. So I'll probably skip that tag part on this as well. The tail is golden pheasant tippets, so the other part of the crest that you buy. The butt is peacock herl, but I'll show you something in a second. And then body is orange floss, same techniques and everything. Rib is gold tinsel, and the beard is brown hen hackle. The wing is just natural red or brown squirrel tail. I did another one that to me was kind of a little bit closer to what the wet fly was in Bergman's book. And I really like the looks of that one. That's got ostrich herl for the butt, and then a black rib. And I basically just used black tying thread, twisted up real real tight so it wouldn't spread.
You're still sharing screen, Mike.
Oh, sorry. There we go. That's with a black rib and then black ostrich herl for the butt. So like I said, to me, that kind of is more representative of what the wet fly version was. But I'll do kind of a mixture of both, I guess, tonight. So for materials, get this stuff over here. I don't know how much of that you can see, so I will. All right, I'm going to use white thread to start with because that orange definitely gets ugly on top of black thread. So I'll use white to start the fly. The tail will be the tippets, a little section from that. We don't need mallard. So that's my bag of the tippets. I took them off of the head because if my granddaughters ever got into looking at my feathers and stuff and they saw a shrunken head sitting there, they'd probably have nightmares. For the butt, I'm going to use a piece of ostrich herl and then the same brown hen for the I guess you can't see the same brown hen for the throat. And I'll try to do that throat a little different. So again, I'll start my thread a little ways back just to keep me from getting bulk at the eye. I don't know what this is. It seems like it's more like 70 denier, but it'll be fine. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tie in the tail on the way down. And I think it would be easy to flatten this. I think it would be easy to also tie in the, this is small gold French tinsel. It's kind of a braided coarse tinsel. And I'll just cut the end of that nice and smooth and start it right at the front here. And again, I'll have that on the far side. And I'll wrap that back while I'm tying in. So normally you stroke the barbs away from the rachis to line up the tips, but on these it's a flat feather. So you just have to force yourself not to do that. Leave them flat. And let me get a little bit further down the shank before I mess with that. Now again, I'm trying to stay as closely touching turns as I can. Now I'm getting close enough to tie that in. So I'll have to take a different section. If you really want to get fancy, you can kind of ignore, see where those tips are shorter. The black tips are shorter on that end. You could just strip a little bit of that away just to get that out of there. And then that's a little bit more colored. Grab a section of that. Maybe about a 1/4 inch worth. And then just try to fold it. And I want the tail to be right about a half of a hook shank. And that usually puts that dark bar right there at where the butt will be. So I'm going to go ahead and tie that in right on top. Oops. That is 70 denier and it's some old thread. So hopefully we'll make it through. To reload my bobbin real quick here. There we go. I'll be lucky if I have a flat body on this one, that's for sure. But I'll do my best. Wrap that right to the end of the shank. Tie in a piece of peacock herl. I'm sorry, ostrich herl. Right there at the back. Whoops. I think I'll still be okay. I tied that pencil on the way down. I should have done that with the floss instead of this step, but I'm going to try to do it without jostling that butt. Now the stem of this ostrich herl is so insignificant, it's not going to make a bump. So I will wrap forward and just kind of tidy everything up, and hopefully we'll have a nice smooth. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. From the front, I'm going to tie in the floss, and again, grab about a 10-inch length. Grab 2 of those strands. Set the other 2 aside for later. Cut off the ends so they're even. And then you can cut it and just kind of pull it back to the end of the body. Flatten out my thread every once in a while. 140 denier gets a lot flatter than this does, that's for sure. And then flatten it out some more and come forward. And I'll go ahead and I can see that thread fraying already. Go ahead and get rid of that white thread. Change over to the black when I get, well, actually I should do that now so I can catch the materials as they come forward. All right, so first will be bring the floss around and then stroke it to straighten all those strands out. I usually tie 2 or 3 and then switch to a different pattern and tie 2 or 3 of those. So my streamer box is all a lot of these size 6 and 8 streamers like this that are all different colors and combinations and different wing types. So I don't necessarily have one go-to, but I like using these all the time. So I'm going to try not to jostle that too bad. I don't think I did. Come forward about the same, about 7 wraps. Tie this off with just a few, enough to keep it there tight, because I'll have plenty of wraps going back over that. A lot of times when you finish off a material, everybody wants to just cover with thread and just get it all smooth. You don't necessarily always have to do that, and that's one thing that can really make sure that you end up with a big bulky head, is just trying to finish everything off when you really don't have to. I'm going to take a soft hackle feather here, one that I want to look at the barbs. I'm just going to go ahead and take that off because that's about right. What I want is when I stroke those barbs out, kind of hold them up there, I want it to get real close to the point of the hook. So I'll probably get rid of all this fuzzy stuff at the end. And I don't want to use thick stem very much either. So I'm going to isolate the tip up here a ways. Say right about in there. Cut a little triangle and then tie that down nice and tight. And now I'm going to take that hackle and actually bend the stem as I pull it through. And that kind of helps to fold those to where they're pointing back. And then give me a hackle pliers real quick here. Hackle pliers just kind of helps you keep the feather oriented. To keep those leaning backwards. Just wrap this like you would do a soft hackle. Probably about enough. And then tie that off. Get rid of the hackle pliers. Those English hackle pliers are kind of a pain. Stroke all this back. Whoa, what happened to my thread? Stroke all this back. And then come in and snip out that stem. And now take all of that hackle and just from the top, just stroke everything down. You can look at it like this to make sure you're splitting it good. Stroke everything down and just kind of hold it underneath. And then take your thread and wrap over that a few times. And that'll give you that nice full beard. And then I'll take a piece of squirrel tail. Take about 9 or 5 hairs. If you get it out 90 degrees to the tail, a lot of times you don't really have to stack it. And I don't think I will on this one. So measure that to where the tips go just past the tail. And that's where I'll cut it. Again, holding my finger on the opposite side of the hook so that, now one thing about squirrel tail is it is very slippery. So one thing you can do is use a little bit of thread wax. And that'll help keep that, for one thing, it keeps it from rolling around the hook, but it also lets you grab onto it without your thread slipping off. Clean off some of that excess wax there. Flatten out my thread. Just clean that up. Get all the gaps. Come back to the back and whip finish. And again, UV resin makes these look really nice. For the head, ooh, got a little too much on there. And my light. Put the cap on your UV resin before you use the light. And that'll keep you from getting it hardened around the tip. And that's telephone box.
Really
How
nice
are we doing
fly,
for
Mike.
time?
Oh, we're good. That's a pretty fly. You know, you make these look so easy.
Um, one thing is, once you get that technique down of making the body smooth, these are really fun to play with. And doing it in a streamer form is a lot easier than doing it as a wet fly, a smaller wet fly. So if you are interested in trying to do any of the like the Bergman type, wet flies, these are real good ones to get practice on, even Atlantic salmon flies down the road. Teaches you how to make a nice smooth body, how to do the different parts. So the telephone box and the Canadian Killer.
Very nice, Mike, both of them.
Fun to tie, fun to fish. They look good in your fly box, so you grab them and you fish with them, and you end up getting confidence because
Anybody have any questions for Mike? Welcome, Alan Gretchen. I just see you joined.
Sorry for being late, guys.
no problem.